and a few of the other bits and bobs going on around GM to do with suicide prevention and suicide bereavement. So my name's Rachel Jackson, and I'm the Operations Manager for the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service. So I'll start with a bit of a background in terms of our service, how it came about and where we're up to now. So 6 Degrees Social Enterprise in Salford, which is our talking therapy service in Salford for anxiety and depression. We provide the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service, and that's on behalf of Greater Manchester NHS. In terms of how we came about, so in 2019, 6 Degrees ran a project called the Greater Manchester Suicide Bereavement Information Service. We recognised that there was a huge gap for those people bereaved by suicide to access support and understand what was out there. In response to the COVID pandemic in 2020, we were asked if we could roll out our GM Suicide Bereavement Information Service to cater for all bereavements, so to support people that were losing their loved ones or friends, people they knew in very sudden and traumatic ways through the pandemic, maybe unable to grieve in their normal way, say goodbye to loved ones in hospitals. So we were asked if we could support people bereaved, no matter the cause or sort of the reason for the death. And so they recognised as well that there was a huge need for a service like that, and that's how the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service was commissioned. So it was decided that the Suicide Bereavement Information Service and the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service would merge under the one name, and that's sort of where we started back in 2021, and over the last 3 or 4 years we've continued to develop, continue to grow and support more people each year, which is really positive. It means that more and more people are learning about us and knowing where to go for that support when they need it. So in terms of our role at the Greater Manchester Bereavement, we are there to provide bereavement support across all 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester, and we can support anybody bereaved or impacted by a death, living or working in Greater Manchester, all ages. It doesn't matter the cause of death or how long it's been, and that also includes bereavement by suicide, sorry. Obviously that's how we started, and that's really important to us that we are still recognised as a service that can support those people that are bereaved by suicide. The service can support people bereaved themselves, people calling on behalf of family members or friends maybe they're concerned about, and we also support professionals as well, seeking advice maybe for people that they're working with, or maybe wanting some advice about getting somebody over to our service. And our aim really, in a nutshell, is to help people find the right kind of help and support that they need when they're going through bereavement. And this looks very different to everyone. I will touch base in some future slides just on the kind of support that we can offer and what we do offer based on what people are looking for when they call us. We like to see ourselves as maybe a front door to bereavement care across GM, helping people find out what's out there, reducing that complication and maybe overwhelm that you might experience if you were to do a Google search, for example, if you wanted to find out what was happening in your local area in terms of bereavement support. We like to think that we can keep that all in-house here at GMBS and help people navigate that a little bit easier. And roughly at the moment, we're supporting around 100 people each month. So like I said, we continue to grow each year, which is really positive. We might not be the right service for everybody, and that's okay. But I think we just want to feel assured that there's support for everybody. It's, no matter where they are, whether that's our service or a different service, we're happy to learn and connect with other organisations as well and think about how we can support people in the best way. So the next few slides just touches base a little bit on how we can help. So we provide emotional support. We don't provide counselling or therapy ourselves. I'll explain later what we would do if somebody was looking for that. But the team of practitioners are there to offer a space where somebody can share their story and feel listened to. Um, if you were to contact the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service, you would speak to the same person, so you wouldn't have to repeat your story, which can be really difficult for people sometimes when they're accessing a phone line service. And our practitioner can offer up to 10 phone calls. These are these tend to be spread out fortnightly, but it just depends on what that person might be looking for. It might be that that person thinks that they want to access all 10, and actually after 4, 5 or 6 calls, they feel like that's been enough for them to open up, talk about how they're feeling. It might be that within that emotional support as well, the practitioner can help with thinking about what might be helpful for that person, whether that's some coping skills or advice around looking after themselves, and also space as well to explore what other help could be useful for that person, maybe in their local area, national, GM wide. So that's just one aspect of our service that we can help people with. Secondly, we can provide we can provide education and information. So that could be in the form of resources, whether that's websites, online resources. We can send out paper copies if that's more accessible for people, especially if we have, say, older people contact us. We might talk the resources through with people on the phone as well, because that can really help. What we found is that if you feel a little bit more educated on what grief may look like, how it might feel, it can help you navigate that journey a bit better. Or it might help you support somebody navigating their journey through loss. A lot of people contact us and we often hear the phrase, I feel like I'm going crazy, I feel like I'm losing my mind, and actually having some understanding that you're going through a really difficult situation, something that's going to bring up a lot of feelings and emotion. Without having to sort of normalize that process because it looks different for everybody. Having that understanding can really help people. That's what we found. We also do a lot of signposting and referrals onto other services and organisations. So we have an internal database at GMBS with a range of different services, organisations, bereavement, mental health, that if somebody wanted something specific, maybe they were looking for counselling in Trafford, or maybe they're looking for peer support groups in Wigan, then we can have a look what's out there, do some research, offer them some signposting, and check in, see if that's been suitable, if there's anything else we can help them with. So some people are quite clear with what they're looking for, and so we can use our database and our resources to help them navigate that. Again, similar to what I was saying earlier, it can be quite overwhelming to do a Google search on what's out there, what the referral process is, or the wait times and the criteria. So we try and keep that all in-house so that we can help people the best we can, really. And then finally, we can help with some practical queries, maybe related to loss or death. So, for example, if somebody's going through need an inquest, maybe coroner's court are involved, then we can talk them through what that might look like, because it can be quite hard to sort of foresee what that process might involve. Sometimes you're bombarded with loads of information. Other times you have absolutely no information given to you. So we can help that person understand what could come up, what might be expected. It can look different depending on the circumstances, but again, having some understanding when you're going through a really difficult situation as it is, having some information given to you about practical queries or problems that might be coming up can really help somebody navigate their journey through grief. So this is just a snapshot, I guess, of what we've heard through our feedback in terms of why this kind of support is so helpful and so important for somebody that is bereaved. So most people simply want time and space to talk when they are grieving. not everybody wants therapy, not everyone wants counselling. And so these are just two of the main themes that come through our feedback from our service users in terms of what they value most. So these always come up as the top two categories on our questionnaire that we ask our service users to kindly complete. And that is, I value having someone to talk to, and I value having a safe space to feel listened to. So another reason why this is really important, what we found is that majority of our service users make contact within the initial 6 months of a bereavement. So between 1 month and 6 months of having lost somebody. A lot of services out there that offer counselling and therapy, they aren't available for people unless maybe the bereavement's been 6 months, sometimes 9 months, sometimes 12 months. I have a psychological background and I understand why that might be the case, but that doesn't mean that there's not value in having somewhere to go for support, for guidance, for a space to offload and talk and feel listened to. And actually, by having that space to talk, it can prevent that further impact of bereavement on physical and mental well-being. And it can sometimes prevent the need for longer term support. There have been times where people have come to us and it's not been 6 months yet, it's not been 9 months. So we've offered those regular phone calls to touch base, to check in. That person's maybe initially thought that they've wanted counselling or therapy, and actually, having spoken to us for a period of time, they've decided that's no longer the case and that they were happy to sort of see how things go. They could always come back to us if they changed their mind and they wanted to know what was out there. So I think it's really important to highlight this because you may come across in your roles maybe people that are bereaved, and it might feel like there's nowhere for that person to fit if it's really early on in their grief journey. But they can come to GMBS, they can talk, they can have that space. And then in terms of how we can help, so I think I've mentioned throughout I've been talking today so far, but we are a telephone and email support service. So we offer one-to-one support over the phone and via email. Majority of our service users call us. Those that do email us might be looking for something a bit more straightforward. They know exactly what they want. They're looking for counselling, they're looking for therapy, and we can email them across some options, and then we can just touch base and check in and see if that was okay. Other times, if someone maybe sends us an email and it's got not quite clear cut what they're looking for, we would offer them maybe a phone call just to explore that if they feel comfortable talking to us on the phone. The other way we can offer support is that we provide an introduction to bereavement, which is an online educational session. And that's available to anybody that wants to take part, whether you're a service user, whether you are a professional. We run these monthly. Currently, they are the third Thursday of every month at 11 o'clock, but we're thinking of moving them over to a different day, a different time. We've just recently uplifted it a bit with more fresh content. But just linking back to what I was saying earlier, it's an educational piece. The idea is that it gives people a little bit more information on what grief might look like and feel like. It gives some information on coping mechanisms, understanding around how grief can impact us. So it can be really helpful for anybody that either is bereaved themselves or maybe wants to learn more about bereavement. And it's just a single session. It's not sort of a group that you engage in over a period of time. And it's about 20-30 minutes long. So again, if anybody was interested, they could send us an email, give us a call, and we can offer out the next dates that are coming up. So as I mentioned earlier, we started off as a project for those people bereaved by suicide to help them navigate what was out there in terms of support. And the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service, although we're now, combined and we sit under the umbrella term of the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service, we still want to ensure that those people bereaved by suicide know that they can come to us. And that's really important. So each suicide can affect up to 135 people, often known as the ripple effect. And we know that suicide bereavement can be, our service users have referred to it before as grief turned up. There's a lot of extra additional complexities and extra layers to a bereavement by suicide, such as maybe going through an inquest, media attention, professional involvement as well. So we feel like it's extremely important that these people feel supported through that and know that they can either come to the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service, or a professional can sort of give them information about our service and how to get to us. Another reason why it's so important, so alongside the ripple effect, research has also shown that those people bereaved by suicide also have a greater risk likelihood of experiencing suicidal thoughts and ideation themselves, and maybe mental health problems in the future. So as part of offering support to this particular group of people that are bereaved, we aim to offer a really timely support package, and we do this in partnership with GM coroners. So we call it our coroner notification process. So what can happen is a family or an individual can come in contact with a coroner due to a sudden death, maybe a suicide, and with the consent of that family or that individual, the coroner can notify us, provide GMBS with just a couple of bits of information, name, contact detail, and we can then outreach support. We'll touch base with them within 72 hours of receiving that notification, and we will just see if they would like to talk to us about anything, if we can help in any way. Sometimes it's really, really soon following the loss, and maybe it's not the right time, and that's absolutely fine. But we just let them know that we're here, and we'll schedule a phone call maybe in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever feels comfortable for that person. And then we can touch back touch base again with them, see if anything's changed, if we can help at all. And we promote our the Shining a Light on Suicide campaign as well. I've just put the link to the website there, and I think that QR code should work, and it should take you straight through to the website. So the Shining a Light on Suicide campaign, the website has so many helpful resources on there, and it's got a very useful training package, which I believe is just 20 minutes long. It's called Learn How to Save a Life, I believe. And we have been encouraging, and I'm thinking maybe Adele might talk a bit more about this, but we encourage people to, no matter your background, whether you're a professional, working in the healthcare system or not, we encourage everyone to have a look at that training. It's free, and it can just give you some confidence and some skills maybe for how you might navigate those difficult conversations if you were concerned about somebody. So in terms of the impact of bereavement and how that presents in our service, so we aren't a crisis service, but sometimes individuals do present with high levels of distress. That can present in various ways, whether that person's particularly tearful on the phone with us, maybe they don't know what to say, where to start. They may be experiencing mental health problems themselves, suicidal thoughts, and that can be whether the death was a shock, whether it was bereavement by suicide, whether was it expected, because grief can affect us in so many different ways. It really isn't a one-size-fits-all response. So in terms of how we manage that at the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service, we can assist with risk management through listening, through safety planning, and we try our best to link people in with the right service. So again, just coming back to, we're not the right service for everybody, and there are other services that can support people maybe that are in high levels of distress, or experiencing significant mental health problems. they can probably support them better than we can, because we are such a, I guess we're a low level telephone service and we're not a crisis service in terms of our operating hours. So we try our best to get that person to the best place possible. And then in terms of how we support that in-house with our team, so we have so much support available here at 6 Degrees. So the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service can tap into all of that. We have duty where somebody, a senior manager is always available. So a practitioner can contact them if they want to debrief, get advice, just, check in that they've done the right thing, maybe, regular supervision and reflective practice as well, and lots of training in different pockets, different areas of bereavement. I'm hoping that this plays okay, because it is a link from YouTube. So we get a lot of feedback from our service users at the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service, and I was thinking of different ways to present that. So a lot of the time we get feedback through our questionnaire, which I pulled out a little bit earlier on in the presentation, in terms of what people value most when they access our service. We also get care opinions, which is a place where people can share their story about how we helped and what they've been through. But I wanted to play this video because I think this really highlights the value of the service for this particular person. So this is a service user, has been a service user of ours, and you'll probably recognise him. He's called Mike Palmer, and he's part of the Three Dads Walk-In. So he has done so much work across the UK following his loss by suicide, to try and change the system and have a really positive impact, hopefully, on how people are supported, and how we can hopefully prevent suicides. So I'm just going to play this video. It is very sensitive, and so if you would prefer not to listen or watch, then I would probably suggest now is a good time just to mute, or log off and log back on maybe in about 5 minutes. I will just play it now though.
No sound.
There's no sound. Okay.
What you have to do, just as a note, what you've got to do is unshare it, put on your audio, click your audio, and then share again.
No, I think before you share, you have to. We can. Well,
you have to stop sharing, click on your audio, allow audio as you're about to share, click on audio, and then you share, and then you press play. There's an audio.
I'm just looking for it now.
If you don't manage it, we can just put the link in the chat box.
Okay,
I'll try this for it.
I'll try this one option before. So.
No.
No. I'm sorry. I'm not sure.
Right, we'll put the link in the chat box.
Yeah,
but
is that okay?
Yeah, it's Mike Palmer, who's one of Three Dads Walking, who you may have seen on the news. And he lost his daughter to suicide. And he just talks about how basically the GM Bereavement Service was a lifeline for him. It's definitely worth a watch. And I'll get a link and I'll pop it in the chat box.
Okay, so apologies for that. I'll just log up back onto the slides. Okay, so alongside the work that we do in the community with our service users, we also run and attend a lot of events as well. So for the last year, we've tried to do regular coffee morning sessions at a venue in the city centre called House of Books and Friends. We chose this venue, well, if anybody's been, it's a beautiful venue, but also they do a lot of work with organisations and charities in a way to reduce social isolation. So that's one of their missions. So when I approached them to ask if we could use their space to run some events for our service, to invite people in to learn more about GMBS and to talk through some topics, they were more than happy to do that. So we try and run those alongside any key awareness raising dates that might be happening across the UK. So Dying Matters Week, Grief Awareness Week, Suicide Prevention Day. And we try and share information, so posters and what's happening on our website. So that QR code should take you through to the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service website. We can also provide training. So in a similar way, our introduction to bereavement, our educational session, we can deliver that to other services or organisations, professionals, rather than them having to come along to the session that we run monthly. And we also attend different services and organisations to talk about GMBS as well, team meetings, for example. So if anybody sat on the call today and maybe they're interested in linking in for something like that, I will put my email address in the chat box, or you can contact the service directly and the emails will come over to myself. And I guess what we want to do is promote the service the best we can across communities, across Greater Manchester, so that people know about us, they know where they can go if they want support, need support. And our website also has an interactive map of Greater Manchester, so you can click on each of the boroughs and there'll be a list of services that are available in each of the localities. So that can also be a really helpful resource for professionals and for service users as well. And then in terms of accessing GMBS, we are, like I said earlier, telephone service and email service. There's no wait time. So we are available Monday to Friday between 9 and 5, except for bank holidays. And there's no referral needed. So what we prefer is people contact us directly themselves. So then we have clear consent and we can help that person as they need it, rather than using a referral form, for example, and then contacting the person and maybe struggling to touch base with that person. So we try to eliminate all of that and try and make it as seamless as possible. If a professional, for example, is concerned that the person they think needs to access us won't make that phone call, they could either send us an email if they feel more comfortable doing that, or the professional could get in touch and say, are you okay to touch base with this person? As long as there's consent there and some brief information just to ensure that they are suitable for our service, then we can also navigate it that way. And if anybody leaves us an email or a voicemail, for example, if it's the weekend, then we aim to get back to them within 48 hours. And they are our contact details, so our phone number, our email address, and there's the website again. So if you did want to reach out, find out more about GMBS or talk to me about anything else that might have come up today on a one-to-one basis, then you're more than welcome to email that email address there. And if it's just addressed for Rachel, then it'll get over to me. I think that's probably the end of, it's the end of my slides. So I'll be handing over to Adele. So Adele, if you just want to let me know when to click on to the next slide for you.
Yes, thank you. I've been busy responding to messages in the chat box, so this will be your time to have a quick look through, and if there's anything else you can add, please do, Rachel. I've tried to keep on top of it. I'm just typing response to the last question from Melanie, who asked if it's only for people with a recent loss, so not those struggling with loss from years ago. And I'd say no, it doesn't. the way I sum it up is the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service is available for anyone living or working in Greater Manchester who's experienced a bereavement by any cause. This is so it's not just suicide as it was originally. No matter how long ago. We always say no matter how long ago. I remember in the early days of the service, we had somebody contact us and they've been bereaved for 20 years. I think it was a suicide loss and they'd never talked to anybody about it. I remember that. And they'd, you know, for 20 years, we know that there's a lot of stigma and, you know, shame around certain, you know, I suppose suicide. So we're trying to break that as well. But yeah, it's bereavement from any time. I'll just ping that to you now. And there was also a bit of a discussion going on, Rachel, about people who are caring for those that are end of life. I've actually been in that position myself. Now, our bereavement service doesn't cater for that. I mean, but only because I'm under the impression, and I've just emailed Elaine Parkin, actually, who leads on palliative care, that there is support available for those for families end of life. But I'm really I'm happy to confirm that. And as I said, Gemma, it might be, just to put it on Elaine, it might be one that you want to run a bite size on about what support is available for people. I'm also conscious of those that care for loved ones who have dementia. And again, this is a family experience where almost the bereavement happened more than once. There's a brilliant ad, I think, from the Alzheimer's Society that I've heard on the radio, where they talk about that, almost that bereavement, you know, when their loved one no longer knows who they are. That's a loss. And I wanted to mention that the experiences of people's loss is massive as well, especially in suicide prevention. We've had to be very specific with this service to focus on bereavement, but I know that in Salford, where you're based, you are commissioned to provide a loss service as well, aren't you? Bereavement and loss. But that takes us on a whole new topic of conversation. We're trying to focus on bereavement here. But before I start speaking, Sarah, you've got a hand up. We can take a quick question from you before I just talk about next slides.
Sorry, I don't think I'm existing on the old camera. It just does that every now. Yes.
Don't worry.
Yes. Yeah, there we go. No, just in regards to Angela, Cullen had put a question for, is it over 18? And I thought she was asking me a question in regards to my question about people with learning disabilities. So is this service for adults, for people that are over 18? Just to be clear on that one.
It isn't all age service.
Right.
Whilst we've been commissioned, we haven't had an awful lot of young people call us, but we are available for all ages.
What we found from when I look through the data, because I oversee the contract we have with 6 Degrees for this service, is I think numbers have grown, haven't they, on the young people that are calling, but they're mainly kind of teenagers, I'd say, you know, 16, kind of that age. But the service generally receives calls from adults calling who might want information on how to support their children. It's one of those. And yes, there are some child bereavement charities, especially nationally. So we can signpost people to services that might be able to provide more. And we have got some services in Greater Manchester, but it's not consistent across Greater Manchester. But yes, child bereavement support is one of my particular interests and something I'm trying to develop and work on. But yeah, so if it's okay, I'll just talk about the last couple of slides. So as Rachel said, when we first started, and it's the Greater Manchester Suicide Prevention Programme that oversees the bereavement service. And I mentioned in the chat box that, suicide bereavement is known to be a risk factor for suicide. I like to add the without protective measures, because I think it gives some reassurance. You know, sadly there's so many people bereaved by suicide that it must be quite scary to hear that they're now at increased risk of suicide. So I say that it's clearly not inevitable with the right protective measures in place for people and knowing the support that they can get. But we also know that bereavement itself can increase risk. And I receive all the suspected suicide notifications whenever we have a suspected suicide across Greater Manchester. And sadly, I see many people who have experienced a bereavement or it's an anniversary of a bereavement. So I certainly don't underestimate the impact of a bereavement by any cause. But because initially it was suicide bereavement, and when I came into the role, that was what I was told to focus on. And I think we've done quite a lot and we continue to do so under our suicide prevention programme. So one of the earlier things we did back in 2020, before we knew we were going to be dealing with the pandemic and lockdowns, was the Speak Their Name Greater Manchester Suicide Memorial quilt. Now, this has been on display in numerous places across Greater Manchester. And in fact, that photograph on the right is when we've taken it to London. We've been invited to have it on display in different places. And in October, it's actually going to be on display in the House of Commons, which is amazing. But yeah, what I wanted to mention about the quilt is each square was made by somebody in Greater Manchester who'd experienced a suicide loss. And they made a square in memory of their loved one. And we made a quilt. We just made the one quilt, but the whole Speak Their Name project has now gone around the country, which is amazing. So there are so many now regional quilts, and those groups have often set up as a community interest company, and sadly, they continue to make quilts because we had almost 7,000. Last year, ONS data was shared and 7,000 deaths were registered as suicide last year. So if you think of the statistic that Rachel shared just before, about up to 135 people can be impacted by each death by suicide. They say between 6 and 135. Obviously, I think the 6 is the really close family members. It's huge. There are so many people who've been bereaved or affected by suicide. So there's many quilts around the country now, and we're bringing them all together in October, which will be amazing. But if I have the quilt here, it's actually in a suitcase in my office at the moment, and we're always looking for opportunities to have it on display. So if you're ever running a suicide prevention event or awareness session, please do get in touch with me if you would like the quilt. It's an amazing conversation piece, really. And if you go on our Shining a Light on Suicide website, you can watch a film about the development of the quilt, and you can actually read the stories behind each quilt square. So have a look. There's now an actual national website called Speak Their Name. And you can find out where all the other quilts are, and you can also create your own digital quilt square if you wanted to, in memory of somebody you may have lost. So that project just grew wings, to be honest. It's still going. I know Cornwall are in the process of making a quilt at the moment. So that's one project that we had. If we could just go to the next slide, please. I don't know if you've heard the Sing Their Name choir or heard of them. So when we ran the quilt project, I'd actually seen quilts, suicide memorial quilts, when I'd been on a trip to America many years before. And so we ran this project in Greater Manchester, and I was amazed actually at how positive a project it was for people who'd been bereaved. The peer support that developed was amazing. You know, people were learning something that they'd not done before. It was really quite profound, the positive impact it had. So after we'd finished that project, and it would be lovely if we could continue making quilts, but, you know, that's not something I would have capacity to do. But if some other group wanted to look into it, I'm happy to discuss. But I wanted another creative peer support option for suicide bereavements. And so the Sing Their Name choir was formed back in 2023. And the goal was to sing at the Baton of Hope event when it came to Greater Manchester. And you may be aware of the Baton of Hope tour. It's happening again this year, and it's actually coming to Tameside while it's touring around the country. So keep an eye on our Shining a Light on Suicide news and events pages. You can see everything that's going on. So we created this choir. And as I said, the intention was to sing in the summer of 2023. And the group came together. And again, it was the most powerful peer support. You know, people in the choir, some who'd been really quite recently bereaved, who were then meeting people who were further down that journey. And that gave them hope, I suppose, that they could survive this. Such a lovely group. Anyway, they didn't want to stop. Basically, after we ran the event, they wanted to carry on, and I was able to fund it for 2 years. And then at the beginning of this year, they've just become a community interest company. So I'm kind of, though I do sing in the choir, I have to say, I'm stepping back from the organisation, but they have their own website. So please, in fact, I'll pop it in the box. Have we got another? Is this the only one for the choir, Rachel? I think it is, isn't it? This is the only slide. Okay, so I'll put the email in, website for the choir. Have a look. The choir have performed in London, in Lichfield Cathedral. They were on Songs of Praise a few weeks ago. They're not a faith choir, but Songs of Praise reached out and asked if they could feature the choir. And there's podcasts and everything, and they're always looking for new members. So if you know of anybody who would like some peer support, who has been bereaved, suicide, do encourage them to get in touch. So there's that event. We have run, this is one of those events that Rachel talked about supporting as well. I don't know if anybody came to see it. We ran the Projecting Grief exhibition at the Trafford Centre, which was lovely, and we actually had the choir come and sing in the Trafford Centre on the Wednesday evening, which went down really well. In fact, the choir are going to be singing at the Trafford Centre on the 10th of December this year, in the evening. So if you're there doing any Christmas shopping, you'll probably hear them. And just to mention that I've recently, and again I'll put it in the chat box, I'm organising what's called the Time Together Service of Reflection, which will take place at Manchester Cathedral on the 6th of September in the afternoon. And it's for anybody who's been bereaved or affected by suicide. They don't have to live in Greater Manchester. If they can reach Manchester on the day, they're very welcome to come. They've been running this service for 10 years. It'll be 10 years this year in London. And I was talking to the organiser of the London event, and I said it would be lovely to have a service up north. So they've encouraged me to organise one. And so that's happening in September. So please spread the word about that as well. And I'll put mentions in the chat box. I've just added my details there. I know Rachel had shared hers earlier, but I've just mentioned mine if anybody wants to get in touch. But yes, I don't know if you've got any last words, Rachel, while I quickly add a few things to the chat box. But thank you so much for joining us to learn more about the service. And I hope you will kind of share with people that you think would benefit from some support.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else